Welcome to another episode of theorycast. In this 50th, craziest episode, we'll be talking to Jesper Juul. He's a video game theorist, otherwise known as a ludologist, and he's written a book called Half Real, which talks all about video games and the theory behind it, why it's so different from every other medium out there. Now, he's also got a new book coming out in summer 2009 called The Casual Revolution, and he'll be talking all about the big thing about casual gaming. Casual gaming's everywhere now, and in your cell phone, on the web, and so on. So we're talking all about that. Well, he came down to UB yesterday to give a special lecture, and I found time to catch up with him. And basically I had a chat with him about what video game theory is all about, where it's going, and how games or game theory could be applied to the larger context of social media. So stay tuned! Okay, so in Half Real, you talked about how games were essentially simple rules, right?
Yeah, well, I talked about how games were rules, but they were also sort of fictions at the same time. So that book was really about trying to reconcile those different perspectives on games. So, especially in video game theory, there's this debate that's been raging for a while between whether games should be understood as sort of story worlds or whether they should be understood as sort of rule-based systems. And that book was really trying to say, look, it's both at the same time, and here's how it works.
The evidence you presented so far, for example, the Egyptian playing a board game, for instance, that games have been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
And your argument is that because games have been around for a long time, it's actually a very mature medium, right? Versus, say, music, television, film, and so on. But yet, video games have a different kind of sensation around them. For example, Grand Theft Auto, you think of sex and violence, and so on and so forth. Why do you think that's the case? Why is there so much difference? Is it the story or something? Well,
certainly, like, video games are better at creating worlds than traditional board games or card games. Well, for a variety of reasons, like least of which is that, well, it's a clearly audiovisual medium, right? So you could actually you could technically do Grand Theft Auto with a lot of cards and so on, but it would just be very complicated, and it would feel like entire trucks, like the individual games. So it's not that. It's really that video games can do things very easily that are hard to do in card games or board games, like creating worlds that you're supposed to explore. And so why is there sex and violence in video games? I mean, there's sex and violence in some video games. So I think the basic reason is that humans tend to care about sex and violence and stuff like that. So that tends to go into every medium, whatever medium that is. And so that's why you find it in music and film and literature and art, and so it would be weird. Like, why would games be the only medium that didn't contain those things? So that's not surprising. So I don't think it's not that complex games are going away, right? But because it's more that perhaps there are some lessons that were forgotten, so that for a long period of time video games were perhaps a little insular, so they were mostly speaking to people who knew video game conventions already, and which meant that it was hard to get into video games if you didn't know them very well. So I think that there's a few things around that. Like, one is that the people who grew up with video games are now, the first generation that grew up with video games are now parents and have jobs and so on. So they're really busy. It's hard for them to play like Mass Effect or Bioshock or to complete GTA 4. So it means that for them to have a meaningful game experience, you need something that they can pick up and play so faster or play with their family and so on. So which is like the idea. Sometimes people use the term a lapsed hardcore gamer or ex-hardcore
gamer. Or yuppie gamer, perhaps.
Yuppie gamer. I'm not sure that's a bit imprecise, but I think that's one part of it, right? And another part is that Another part is that video games for a long period of time were just like becoming more and more expensive to produce. I mean, it's still happening, but I think that's the sort of point of diminishing returns. So where the fact that, say, like the Xbox 360 has better graphics than the Xbox is not necessarily something that's so immediately obvious to most people. I mean, it's obvious to you if you're sort of an enthusiast, but I don't think it's necessarily obvious to everybody else. So which means that because the 360 has better graphics, technically, it actually becomes much more expensive to make the game. So that's this part of diminishing returns. Games become more and more expensive, but at the same time, players don't necessarily feel they're getting something extra for that money. So casual games mean a few different things, right? There are small downloadable games like Zuma and Mystery Case Files and so on, and then there are games like Korean Guitar Hero, which you can also see casual in a different way. I think one of the things that characterizes all of these games is that they're quite easy to learn to play. So the time from you picking up the game to you actually doing something successful is quite short. That's one defining characteristic. And another is that generally speaking, you don't have to play for a very long period of time for it to be satisfying. If you want. So it's one of those things that it's ambiguous, right? That Facebook doesn't say. So I talked about The Sims, right? The Sims doesn't say what you're supposed to do, but it doesn't say like create a prospering family and make nice things in your house. But most people think that's sort of like the implicit assumption. And in the same way, like Facebook doesn't say the goal is to get as many friends as possible, but
that's what a lot of people do.
Yeah, it's hard not to think about it that way. So I think it's a bit more complicated. I think you can use Facebook as a game if you want, and you can also choose not to game. But Facebook doesn't tell you whether it is, but it's sort of up to you as a user.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot.
Yeah,
thanks for the time, and I'll look forward to your book,
Yeah.
The Casual Revolution. I keep having problems pronouncing that, but coming out next summer, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot, Juul.
Thanks. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.